They sit down. So Steve, you want to get us going? Thanks.
Well, thank you, Rip. This is a little scary because I'm a conservative from California. And you know, Minnesota, I mean, this is, after all, the only state in the country that did not vote for Ronald Reagan even once. I thought I could get some applause with that line. On the other hand, you know, Californians these days are scratching their heads saying, God, Jesse Ventura, damn, why didn't we think of that? I mean, you know, ever since Jerry Brown succeeded Ronald Reagan and left office, we've had these three really boring governors of both parties who could put no-dos to sleep. Good men, all of them, but... and let me also add, though, that I consider it a great honor to be here at an institute named for Hubert Humphrey. I mean, as a part-time political historian, I have a great fondness for him. I think it's one of the great misfortunes of history that the happy warrior, the man who championed the politics of joy, reached his apogee at the same moment that the politics of anger and discontent reached its zenith, which really foreclosed his possibilities. But there was a sentence written about Humphrey by James Jackson Kilpatrick in 1968 that I've always loved. Kilpatrick said, "He pours out speech like a tasty freeze. If God had made him a canine, he would wiggle around like a hound dog having his belly scratched." I think we miss happy warriors like that in American politics. Now, it's really devilishly clever of the Humphrey Institute to put me on this panel about cooperation and consensus. You know, even my friends call me Dr. Death on the sprawl issue. That's what my friends call me. And this is a worthy challenge because it's the knottiest aspect of the problem. I think this aspect of the issue awaits its Tocqueville, someone of broad gauge who can put this problem in a large context. And I'm not sure I'm equal to that challenge, but I'll try. As Rip has sort of hinted, I'm here to offer a jaundiced view of things. And I mean, I'm sort of compelled to be positive, but I'm reminded of the old Woody Allen line, "Well, I'm sorry I can't leave you with something positive. Would you take two negatives?" I'm actually going to do it the other way around. I'm going to start with a couple of negatives and then try to end with a positive in the spirit of comedy. Because I actually happen to agree with many of the principles and observations of the smart growth movement. Surprise, revelation number one, perhaps. But my contrarian nature leads me to worry a bit. Because the conventional wisdom, or what you sometimes can call consensus, or sometimes a little different, but the conventional wisdom is so often wrong about things. And whenever I see as much heated agreement as I do about an issue like really we've seen a lot here the last couple of days, I think there's a need for some cranky people like me to call for a timeout. We're all smart growthers now. Even the National Association of Home Builders is for smart growth. And that, I think, should cause us a little bit of pause. 25 years ago, Richard Nixon remarked, "We're all Keynesians now." Remember that? That was the surest sign that Keynesianism was about to expire as a dominant economic doctrine. 10 years ago, it was axiomatic amongst the chattering classes all across the political spectrum that the U.S. was failing to keep pace with Japan, and that our corporate culture was too short-sighted and so forth. I mean, very smart people like Clyde Prestowitz and James Fallow said we need to be more like the Japanese. Well, we don't hear that much anymore, do we? In the area of land use, I think it's useful to recall that when Jane Jacobs wrote her, I think, brilliant criticism of the conventional wisdom of 1961 about segregating land uses rigidly, urban planners attacked her rather severely, and they really resented what she'd written. Meanwhile, one of her earliest champions was William F. Buckley, Jr. In fact, I'd like to point out to smart growth people that if you go back to the 1950s, some of the most cogent critiques of the interstate highway system, of the way suburban sprawl was changing the character of our communities, were made by conservatives like Russell Kirk, the author of The Conservative Mind, or Robert Nisbet in The Quest for Community. And that's why I sometimes like to say to smart growthers, only partly mischievously, welcome to the party, what took you so long to get here? But the best way to begin putting the problems of governance into some context is to make recourse to the taxi driver, the sort of keeper of the American soul. About 2 years ago, I went to St. Louis to study the sprawl issue there. Turns out Myron had just been there a couple weeks before me. I took a taxi from Lindbergh Field out to St. Charles County, which is where the suburban sprawl was going on there. So, of course, I want to get some local insight from the taxi driver. I said, so what do you think about what's going on here? He says, man, they're building so fast. If they keep building like this, there won't be any land left. Kind of, these are the common sentiment you hear. I asked him where he lived. He said, oh, I live in the city of St. Louis. And then without any prompting, he said, but I'm going to move out here. The quality of life is just so much better, and you get so much more value for your housing dollar here. Now, this is what social psychologists call cognitive dissonance, right? The ability to keep contradictory thoughts in your mind without being troubled by it. People have already referred to the remarks that were first attributed to Tom McCall, that the American people are against two things. They're against sprawl and they're against density. Right? Now, this makes solving the problem or improving the problem, since we don't really solve problems in the world completely, this makes it very difficult to make progress because the only serious remedy for a lot of the problems associated with sprawl is higher density. This makes consensus an elusive beast, a bit like Sasquatch, frequently cited but never captured. The specific problem is that while everyone is for some version of smart growth in theory, I think we've heard this a lot the last couple of days, real people tend to be less enthusiastic about it in their own neighborhood. In Portland, you don't often hear about how the inner ring suburb of Milwaukee recalled their mayor and 2 city council members quite acrimoniously after they'd formed the majority to adopt the higher density zoning plan the regional government wanted them to have. I mean, what you find in Portland is that regional government is very popular on a region-wide basis. Take a citywide poll. But it's very unpopular in local neighborhoods. What people are saying essentially is, oh, you mean density here? Well, we thought you meant over there. And I think that this dynamic perhaps means that the Portland plan is, to use the environmental language, may be politically unsustainable over the long term. Although that'll be an excellent case study for public choice theorists, I think. Or consider this news item from the Berkeley Free Press. After a public hearing dominated by negative testimony, the Berkeley Planning Commission has rejected a proposed smart growth land use plan. Planners say that the plan is needed to maintain a walkable community and to encourage sufficient new construction to meet Berkeley's fair share of regional housing needs. Local residents maintain that the plan will destroy Berkeley by overbuilding in the name of progress. Local activist Becky O'Malley blames developers for the plan. Quote, speculators hiding behind a smart growth banner have started drawing their bullseyes on attractive, viable cities like San Francisco and Berkeley. For the record, Berkeley's population has declined about 5% since 1970. Not huge, but in a growing state, maybe a little odd. And the plan that was proposed would have brought it back up to the 1970 level and then gone up about another 5% over the next 10 or 15 years. Not a huge increase, but the point is, if the smart growth agenda encounters this kind of opposition in Berkeley, it's going to face an uphill fight in a lot of places. So to invoke the overused therapeutic language of our time, I think too many smart growth advocates are in denial about this. And so we tend to resort to a number of burlesques to get around this inconvenient fact.